Hi everybody and welcome to my channel. Ricky here from Behind the Bars TV. In this episode I'm going to be talking about the most notorious and infamous prisoners in Frankland Prison. But before I get into it, I'll just give you a little rundown on Frankland Prison. So Frankland Prison is situated in Brasside, County Durham, and it is a Category A high security prison. So Frankland Prison, as you come through reception and out the other side past healthcare, you have 4 VP wings, also known as the nonce wings, and there is A, B, C, and D. And this is where the most horriblest creatures are housed on these 4 wings. You've also got the healthcare wing, which again also houses some of the worst and most depraved criminals in the country. And then you have the segregation unit. And the segregation unit, they're normally always full in the high security prisons. And this is for the prisoners that are hard to manage and they more or less live inside the blocks and they just get moved from block to block. But further on up the prison, you get to F and G wing and J wing. And these 3 wings is what's classed as the normal location wings. Then further on, you have Westgate unit, which is a pipes unit, which is for people with personality disorders. So Frankland Prison houses around about 800 prisoners, I believe. And then they also have, I can't remember which wing it is, whether it's E wing or I wing, but this is the Muslim radicalization unit. So this is where the Muslim radicals are held, the ones that are trying to convert and radicalize other Muslims. But the most notorious prisoners are the ones that are situated on the VP wings, which is A, B, C, and D. And on A wing is, because Frankland has also now become known as Monster Mansion, and that's because of the type of prisoner that is in there. And Wakefield was the original Monster Mansion because that was predominantly a sex offender prison. But Frankland has now become known as Monster Mansion as well because of the type of inmates that are situated inside of here. And most of the depraved, horrible ones are situated on A wing. Sorry, I was going to say house block. Are situated on A wing. And to start off with, you've got Ian Huntley and Levi Belfield, who have now become friends, and they are living on the same wing together. So on A wing, you've got Ian Huntley and Levi Belfield, who have now become best of friends and are living on this house block together. And Ian Huntley, everyone knows, he's probably the #1 most notorious and infamous and most hated prisoner in the country. And everyone knows what he's in for. He killed the 2 10-year-old girls, Holly Wells and Jessica Chapman, which was horrendous. And everyone in the nation will remember it because it was such a shocking crime. It's one of those ones that you'll never forget. But then along his pal Levi Belfield, who's in for some heinous crimes as well. And he got, the most recent one he got done with was the Millie Dowler murdering that young innocent girl. And he also got done along with another 3 murders, I believe. But these have become friends and living together. And they also were associating with the Yorkshire Ripper just before he died. He's just died at Durham Hospital. I think it was about 3 years ago. He got COVID and died. He went from Frankland Prison to the hospital, and that's where he died. But these monsters were all living together. And another notorious, infamous killer that is living amongst them is Wayne Couzens. And Wayne Couzens is now serving life without parole. He was a serving policeman when he kidnapped, raped, and murdered Sarah Everard. And like I just mentioned, for that, he received life without parole. And another one who's living amongst them on these wings down the bottom is Charles Taylor. And Charles Taylor is, 2 seconds, I've just got it up so I get the facts right. So Charles MacArthur Ganty, as he's known as, is a Liberian former politician and convicted war criminal who served as the 22nd president of Liberia. And he is serving 50 years in prison. So Charles Taylor was found guilty of aiding and abetting a notoriously brutal rebel force who murdered, raped, forced sexual slavery, built a child army, and mined diamonds to pay for guns. Taylor's road to war crimes started after he escaped a US jail where he was waiting to be extradited for embezzlement. So for that crime, or those crimes, those war crimes, he received 50 years in prison. And because it was something to do with the United Nations, this is how he's ended up coming over to this country and being housed in Frankland prison. Charles Taylor was transferred to British custody in 2013, but I believe that he'll not serve all of his sentence over here in England. He will get passed around the different countries in the United Nations, I believe, because at first when I heard of this one, I was thinking, well, how come he's ended up here if he committed the crimes in another country? But it's all to do with the international laws, and that's why he's ended up in HMP Frankland. But Levi Belfield is already serving life without parole. But for his crimes, he was handed a second life without parole, meaning he will never be released from prison for the crimes that he's in for, because he's committed some heinous crimes. Peter Sutcliffe, the Yorkshire Ripper, spent his last days in Frankland prison, housed amongst the other monsters. And he served quite a long time off his sentence in Frankland prison before he died. But can you imagine the conversations that these type of prisoners were having amongst themselves when you've got the likes of Peter Sutcliffe, Ian Huntley, Levi Belfield, and then you've got the likes of Charles Taylor, who will probably have his own little crew inside of Frankland, because I can't imagine him associating with the likes of Ian Huntley and Levi Belfield. But he will be having his own little crew and his own little get-together. But there is many, many more horrible and sick, depraved individuals living inside the walls of Frankland prison. And another one of these notorious sick individuals that's living amongst the other monsters is Stephen Port. Now, Stephen Port is also serving life without parole for 4 murders of gay men, because what he was doing was meeting gay men on it's the equivalent of Tinder for the gay people, which is called Grindr. And he was actually meeting people on Grindr, taking them back to his flat, drugging them and killing them. But there's believed to be many more victims, but these are the only ones he was convicted of. And he got convicted of 4 murders, which he was given life without parole. And Stephen Port is another notorious sick individual that is living amongst the monsters behind the walls of HMP Frankland. But there is many more individuals that are living behind the walls of Frankland that are notorious and infamous. But these are probably the 5 most notorious and infamous prisoners living behind those walls. I will be doing more uploads on notorious prisoners behind bars. But this one was brought to my attention by one of my subscribers who asked if I could do a video on the most notorious inmates in Frankland prison. But if there is any more videos that you would like us to make, please leave it in the comments and I will try my best to get them done, because there's loads of videos that I've got to make, loads of different topics. But if there is anything that interests you that you would like me to discuss and talk about and go into more detail about, please leave it in the comments. And if you are enjoying the content, remember to like and subscribe, because the majority of my viewers are still not subscribed to my channel. So to help me channel grow, could you please go down and double check to see whether or not you're subscribed? And if you're not, could you please hit that button to help the channel grow? Because the bigger it gets, the better it'll get, because I'll be getting more podcast guests on in the future. But I'll leave that one there for now, people. Take care.